All right, my name is Pat Wade. I'm the president of the District 8 Community Roundtable. I want to thank you all for spending part of your Thursday night here and not in front of the television watching my beloved Chicago Bears, who are up 27-3 at halftime, but as last week proved, doesn't mean a damn thing. So I have two things coming up that you should be aware of. One is going to affect the steering committee meeting, which is scheduled for October 14th at 9 o'clock. We're going to move that to the 21st at 9 o'clock. No? Who said no? You weren't going to be there anyway, Janet. Because on the 14th, Mayor Mahan is sponsoring a neighborhoods conference at Yerba Buena High starting at 8:30 going until 2 o'clock. It's his attempt to reinvigorate the neighborhoods associations within the city of San Jose. So if you have the time and the inclination, I encourage you to join me and the other members of the steering committee who will be attending for that, to see what the city has to offer in terms of advice to neighborhood organizations to help be, so the city can be more responsive to us and we can be more effective getting our voices heard and those of our neighbors. And then on the 21st at 1 o'clock is the State of the City address. I didn't write down where that was going to be, but anyway, that's the 21st starting at 1 o'clock. And so hopefully you can go there and find out what vision the mayor has for the city and where he thinks we are right now. I think that's everything else. Our next meeting is November 2nd, it says on my sheet here. And I encourage you to come and to bring 5 of your friends because we're going to be focused on land use. And there's some fairly significant land use issues coming up in the next few years. Pleasant Hills Golf Course being one of them, Reed Hillview Airport somewhat, another one that's farther out. But development in general and we want to make sure that we have a voice in the decisions that are made that affect our neighborhood. So I encourage you to be here for that, find out what's coming up and what you can do to help influence it more effectively. The second thing I need to cover here, because in November we're going to vote on a few changes to the bylaws. And the steering committee has been working on them. I have, on the website, we have a summary sheet. Looks like this, and I'll run you through the changes real quick. We also have a draft of the proposed version 9 of our bylaws that incorporates those changes, so you can get those off the website. I brought about 10 copies of each with me. If you're interested at the end of the meeting, you can get them from me, but they are available on the website. The changes that we are making have to do with Articles 3, and this, I know this is going to put you to sleep, but I'm required by the bylaws to inform you of this. Articles 3 and 5 have to do with dues. We're setting it up so should the steering committee desire to do so, they can elect to forego dues for any given year. Today our dues are $20 a year. This allows us to use some other benchmark for determining membership. So it could be a meeting attendance, it could be volunteering for our events, a variety of things that the steering committee would define, announce in November. This is how we're going to define membership. And if the membership doesn't agree with it, they still have the opportunity to change it through a 2/3 vote. So that's one thing. That's just a technicality. And then membership dues. Oh, the other one is the bylaws currently restrict officers to no more than 2 consecutive 1-year terms. There's a proposal from the steering committee to change that to 4 consecutive terms in the same office. And then the final one has to do with where we bank. When the bylaws were written back in the 2008-9 timeframe, some banks would allow you to set up a requirement for 2 signatures on checks. Most checks are processed by computers anymore. They don't pay a whole lot of attention to the number of signatures anymore, and it's becoming increasingly difficult to get any bank to honor a two-signature requirement. So we're changing the wording so that it will read all funds will be kept in an FDI-insured financial institution, as opposed to all funds except petty cash will be kept in a financial institution requiring two steering committee signatures for withdrawal of all expenditures over $100. So currently, expenditures over $100 require two people to authorize them and two people to sign the check. This would just keep the authorization, but once it's authorized by two members of the steering committee, would allow any authorized signer on the account to write, for instance, a check. So those are the significant actually, those are all the changes. We will be voting on them at the November meeting so that they will go in effect immediately thereafter. Any questions on that? Comments? Okay, thank you. Tonight, we're happy to have a couple of our representatives here to update us on what's going on at the county, as well as what's going on at the state. Both of them served capably as city council members representing us in the district. And we're happy to have them here tonight to talk to us. The first one is going to be Supervisor Sylvia Arenas. I just got locked on what your title was, Sylvia, I'm sorry. But County Supervisor Sylvia Arenas to talk to us about what's going on at the county. Sylvia, please. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. So happy to be back. It's been a while since we've all seen each other, and I'm really happy to have this opportunity to come back and give you an update about some of the things that we're doing at the county. So you know that thanks to many of you who are here tonight, I won my election last year in November, and I started serving in January as a county supervisor, and our district changed just slightly so that it covers Evergreen, south side of San Jose, including Cambria and some parts of Almaden, and then it extends all the way down to San Martin, Morgan Hill, and Gilroy. And so it is quite a different type of support that different from Evergreen. I'm really happy to report, though, that our district, our county district, includes, it is the biggest district compared to the rest of, there's only 5 others. And we have the largest district with lots of open land, a lot of open space, a lot of land. And some of that land is the last farmland that we have in this county. I know that once we were called the Valley of Heart's Delight because there were so many cherries and apricots and just an abundance of fruit. But that has really moved south of us. And as they move south, our families are also moving south. As you've noticed, some of our schools are closing. A lot of just families can't afford to live here anymore. And so 101 going northbound from Los Baños extended to that area. We are seeing more super commuters that way, although we just added a 4th train in Gilroy, which doesn't sound like a big deal, but for folks out in the Gilroy, Morgan Hill area, it is a godsend because they can actually come back to their place of residence after a long stay of work. So as you can tell, this is a different kind of a district, and so some of the updates that I'll give you are related to some of the farmlands, and then some of them are just related to some of the things that we see on an everyday basis. My priorities really haven't changed. They're priorities that impact the quality of life for our children, our families, really our neighborhoods. And so As you all know, the county is the safety net for our neighborhoods, and we really saw this system put to a test during the pandemic. And I'm really proud that Senator Cortese is here because he absolutely did such a wonderful job for us, keeping us all together. And I have a deeper appreciation of the work that you've left behind for all of us. And I'll talk a little bit about some of that through our School Link Services update, because I know that's one of your initiatives that you started. And it is absolutely a godsend now because, as you all know, during the pandemic, we all isolated, and as adults, we had difficulties with that isolation. But our children and our youth definitely had some deep impacts, especially during that age where you're socializing, you're learning through socialization, right? And when you can't socialize, that learning is impacted or really stunted. Not only that, but our emotional well-being. We are meant to be creatures that, and people that connect to one another. That's part of what keeps our community alive. This is partly why you all are here collectively, caring for our neighborhoods, talking about some of the things that are on your mind, making sure that you have pride and love and interest in your neighborhoods. And so I thank you for your service and caring for Evergreen. So with that, with knowing that we have this impact on our children and our youth that will be expressed in different ways, either through a lot of absences at school, which is something that we're seeing, a lot of children are not, and youth are just not attending school, or just a lot of violence, and sometimes when our youth have difficulty expressing themselves, their behavior is expressed in many different ways. And so we understand that there's a mental health crisis, and our President Ellenberg, president of the board, and Supervisor Lee proclaimed a mental health crisis last year, recognizing this huge need, not just for our youth and our children, really for all of us. Because the truth is, COVID and isolating really impacted all of us. One of the things that we have done is through the ARPA funds that were left, that remain, we set aside $12 million for additional mental health for these wellness centers that you may have heard getting established throughout our school campuses, not only in this county, but really statewide, because it's a best practice that our statewide superintendent has set up as a best practice. And so it was really helpful to have this initiative that Senator Cortese had established 2 years before, which is our School Link Services, so that we can really amplify what we're doing already on campuses and then add some additional resources to our wellness centers. And so I've had a chance to tour some wellness centers, especially at our high schools. We are in Evergreen establishing the first ones at our junior high level, at Leyva, and then over at Shibuya and Quimby, and also our Evergreen school, elementary schools. And that's going to look really differently for each of the schools, because they're going to be really personalized for the community and for the children that are living and attending that particular school. So one of the things that I left behind as a council member is I had allotted $100,000 for Evergreen School District to spend on emotional well-being. And so since that didn't get spent, we're hoping, and we're in talks right now with our Evergreen superintendent to ensure that that gets leveraged in a very meaningful way through the wellness centers, and hopefully bringing some additional services. I'm really happy to report that last month we finally sorted out one of the things that were an obstacle that was preventing Rebecca Children's Services from providing services on campus at some of the schools. So we got that sorted out, and that's one of the things, that's one of the services that is going to begin for some of our children. which is absolutely essential. If you have children in your lives or just yourself who might need some additional support and have looked for something, I know as a mom I have looked for additional support services. It is a wait list. It's a huge wait list for services. A lot of service providers are moving out of the area or they're so impacted there's a huge wait list. And so having Rebecca's Children's Services on campus makes it so much easy and convenient for a lot of our kiddos out there. So I'm going to continue to work on that and really extend some of that support that lives through school link services, which originated with Senator Cortese. And then we're also, through the county, we have these, when there's a recommendation that we want, we don't call them memos or proposals, we call them referrals. And so I have a referral in recognizing that our tiny homes and some of our San Jose shelters also need on-site counselors, especially the tiny homes and the interim housing. And that hasn't happened for the city of San Jose, which has the most tiny homes out there. And so I'm pushing that so that we can make sure that there isn't any logistical challenges, that these two bureaucracies, the city of San Jose and the county of Santa Clara, work together. Between different levels of government, there's always a difference in the way that we deliver services, and just the systems are so different. And I'm hoping, because I'm a former council member and I've left some really good relationships at the city level, that will facilitate some of this work. We're going to have some joint meetings with our committees. Our Children and Family Services Committee under the county is going to have joint meetings with the City of San Jose Neighborhood Services and Education Committee, so that we can continue to talk and continue to coordinate services which makes the most sense. It doesn't make sense to work in silos. It makes sense to work with one another, especially when the City of San Jose is leading in a lot of some of the unhoused efforts. The other things that I'm working around are making sure that we protect our agricultural land. I went and visited a number of farms last week, and I was just absolutely amazed at the amount of fruit and vegetables that are grown in our backyard. I just, some of our kiddos don't, I don't know that they understand that an apple falls from a tree, right? That they get it from the supermarket, and we have this real disconnect from the sources of our plants and our vegetables and our fruits. And so anyways, I'm really hoping to elevate a lot of what our South County offers. There's a lot of opportunities, especially during the fall, for you to go out there and pick your own apples and maybe take a hayride at some of the pumpkin patches. There's an open space. The Open Space Authority is providing an allowance for Spina Farms to continue with their pumpkin patch, and so it's a tradition that I think many of us who live here in Evergreen and South San Jose go out into South County to enjoy some of that, and so we'll continue to support them so that those traditions don't get lost and we continue to have them. We're also going to continue to preserve Coyote Valley and our green hillsides and open spaces. We continually work with the Open Space Authority, and there's folks who try to work around some of the regulatory agencies so that they can develop in ways that just aren't, just don't make sense anymore. And so we continue to work on details. I won't bore you with those, but there's plenty of that happening out there in South County. Some of the last things is Farm worker housing, I'm the chair of the Land Use, Environment, and Transportation Committee. It's a long name. We call it Hewlett, lovingly call it Hewlett. And one of the first items that came to us on Hewlett earlier this year was farm worker housing. And the last time that there was a survey or a study done, it was 2018, and during that time, there's about 700 year-round workers, farm workers, and then about 1,400 seasonal workers that come through South County. I'm gonna ask you to guess, how many units do you think that were built, that were allowed or permitted for farm worker housing? And I'll give you a range from 1 to 20. I'll take any numbers. Oh my gosh, yes. No, it was actually 3. It was actually 3. The proposal came in for 4, and we said, 4? Nope. We gotta stick to 3 because of some regulatory issues, mainly to do with water and septic, the sewer systems, which is something really different than we really deal with out here. And so we're working to make sure that those are facilitated, and that there's a lot of farmers out there that want to continue to have farm worker housing on site. A lot of farm workers are not coming back to our area because it's so expensive to live in this area. And so the farmers really have to work hard to bring and recruit farm workers in. And we visited one of the farms out there that bring about 800 farm workers from Mexico under a special visa, and they provide the housing for those folks. But nonetheless, we need folks to work our fields and make sure that we continue to be vibrant, and our lands continue to be viable and thrive, because we don't want to lose that last farmland. And so those are some of the things that we've been working on. There's also a Latino health assessment that I requested, as I know that Latinos were one of the groups that were really impacted. Black and brown populations, especially in South County. We had a high count of folks who passed away during COVID, and just resources that weren't provided. And so we want to make sure that we are in tune with what our community needs, so that we can anticipate and not wait until the very end of somebody's life to provide services, and avoid, hospital stays and hospital visits, rather preventative care, and build that into our systems as we learn more about those needs. And so those are some of the things that we're working on. Not everything, just a bit of highlights. And so happy to come back in another month or so, and give you a couple of more updates, and love to hear any concerns or needs that you all have. So, and if you allow me, so I don't know what the time frame is, but if there's any questions or any, is that okay? Okay, so our chair says yes. If there's any questions. Uh-huh.
When it comes to people who are unhoused,
Mm-hmm.
I like the idea of the county working together with the city. I'm hoping that we'll be able to make a lot of strides in that area, not duplicating work, saving taxpayers' dollars.
Yes.
And also, I know that it's not going to be really well received, but it would be great if we were able to have some kind of database on those unhoused people, so that you already know, here's their situation. Have some kind of data, just like 10 or 15 years ago, we didn't have that with our healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We have to tell everybody the same story, waste all this time, right?
Right.
Now they're more interconnected, they can see, you've seen, radiologist or whatever.
Right.
And so I would like
I love that feedback, and there is a system already set up amongst all the service providers that support the unhoused. And I'm happy to send in a report through the chair or through the president detailing what that looks like over the last couple of months. But one of the trends that, and thank you for bringing this up, one of the trends that we noticed is that we're helping less folks around homeless prevention, only because it's taking longer to help kind of stand them up on their own, which in the past we would give less to more folks. Oops, well, that was terrible. Less to more folks, and that was an effective strategy during that time. But because just housing costs are so, we're just in a terrible spot right now with housing costs. It's just taking a little bit longer. And so then I asked our housing department, if we know that, and that's the most effective way to keep people off our streets is to prevent that. It's less expensive and more effective and more stabilizing for if there's children in the household. And so I said, how are we going to pivot? Because we need to provide more homeless prevention so that we don't start seeing more people coming through the systems. Unfortunately, where the funds are really dwindling down from Measure A, which is our housing bond, but we need to figure out how to keep that sustainable. And I don't know that they have the answer for me quite now, unless we're willing to continue with that housing bond and extend that housing bond. And that would be up to the voters to decide, right? But there's a lot of success rate when people come through the shelters and they go into interim housing, so somewhere in between, and then they go into permanent housing. People stay in their permanent housing, and that recidivism rate isn't very high. So there's a lot of success in the system that we've built, but there just isn't enough money. I recognized earlier in my statements, people are just moving 2 hours away and commuting in order to make a living. Their circumstances are dire, but I think this is when we need to make sure that our systems are being responsive with the right type of strategy. And yes, and I'm going to push on that coordination with the city of San Jose. Absolutely.
I brought this up to you just a few minutes ago. I know that you were very involved with women and children and the protection of such. And we do have somebody in the area that has been presenting himself in a not a good way to women and children and kids who are in schools. Right around here, he's been dropping his drawers and I think he's been to jail a few times, but I'm not sure what we can do. I know that we talked to Kristen and there's been letters to the mayor recently.
Mm-hmm.
This gentleman here has unfortunate video that I don't think any of us want to see, but is there any recommendation you have to kind of elevate the situation?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to elevate that. I'm happy to elevate that to our chief and let him know, because those are the steps to somebody who may step over a boundary and then maybe assault somebody. I know as a young girl walking home from Independence, at high school level, there's all kinds of stuff that you see on their way home because people think that they can get away with it. And so I'm so glad that you all are keeping track of it, and let's nip it in the bud. I will absolutely take that information and I'll call our chief tonight. I'll let him know about that. Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
This is good. He's a good kid, and I'm a wonderful mother. But Judge Secker has taken custody and given it to my ex-husband. He tried to have me institutionalized and labeled as gravely disabled as he has a dangerous man. And yet, the Santa Clara court system has given him custody and given me a life without. And so I'd like to know what Santa Clara is going to do about the bench bar being a police committee and the aftermath. They've already been dismantled. I think they were officially done in May. That was what I saw. But there's an aftermath of parents, including myself, who are missing their children, have been through the support system for some people have gone for 8, 9, 10, 11 years, back and forth, having to pay to see their kids, and then having to deal with all these court cases, time, therapy, all these things, and in the meantime, these children are going through depression. And so we're setting them up to be the next generation of children that will get antidepressants. And so I want to know what Santa Clara's going to be doing about that. I will be ready for Santa Fe City Council, and so I'll be overseeing a lot of what's going on. I'm going to be very involved.
I appreciate your interest in public service. It's a difficult road, and so anybody who comes into public service, I have great admiration for. And I'm so sorry to hear. Huh? Thank you. Well, listen, and I'm so sorry to hear about your son. There is a lot of things that happen within our systems, especially during the pandemic, that made us pivot because we couldn't connect to one another. And I know that that system also needs to improve. The County of Santa Clara doesn't have real oversight of the courts. The courts are independent of the county, but yet we work together. So we really, I can't tell the courts what to do as a county supervisor. I really can't. I can advocate, and I'm happy to, and I think my chief of staff, who's Nancy, I think approached you, and we're willing to sit down and learn a little bit more and figure out how we can advocate if there's a role for us to play in that way. So.
Yeah, there's actually this term called legal abuse syndrome. That person can actually go and get a doctor to diagnose them with that. And there are parents who don't have their kids, and so they have to submit to their jobs because they can't focus on work.
Right.
So they're being everything.
Right.
Can you take that up with the three of them?
Right. And I think Nancy offered to meet with you, and so or meet with us. Okay. Thank you.
Next, we're happy to have somebody who was integral to the founding of this organization back in, and he probably knows better than me when it was, although 2006 or 7 or somewhere back there, 17 years ago, something like that. Anyway, Senator Dave Cortese is here to talk to us about what's going on in Sacramento. Thank you, Dave.
Okay, well, thank you all for inviting me, and thank you, Pat, for doing the work of presiding over the organization, and all the folks who have been pitching in for all these years. So many here were founding members, or some way or another involved in some of the Sherry and Dan Gordon back there, and Jim Zito, of course, and so many just involved very early on from the initiation of some of the early meetings, sitting here in the room with us. So I think that continuity is good. I just think it's important, and hopefully the opportunity here will continue to attract folks and leadership from neighborhoods and other institutions within District 8, to participate and to come and help shape things. The bylaws, I think Jim Zito probably put the most work into the original bylaws. So whatever those changes are, if there's anybody there's anybody who probably memorized it, it was him. I know there was a group involved, but the idea back in the day, just before I talk about policy here, just real quick, was we had the District 8 Roundtable as kind of an adjunct to the office, to the council office itself, like an advisory group, except it was more independent than that. And so the founding part of it was, one founding date would have been when it first got created in my first term, but the real founding date of it as an independent organization was later. It was, in that, probably that 2007 timeframe, somewhere around there. People put a lot of time into it. Said, the group itself, said, let's stand this up as a freestanding organization, regardless of whether a council member wants to have it or not. We'll have it, and then we can call people in, and that's what you're. Yeah, and you're doing it, right? You've been doing it, bringing people in and holding candidates, feet to the fire, and I've had to do that running for office myself, and it's a good thing, because prior to those days, nothing like that really existed, and so many of our communities get siloed. The way this, not just Evergreen, the way the valley was developed, it was developed within sound walls, and neighborhood names, and people would identify themselves, as living in a neighborhood that wasn't District 8 or even something broader like Pleasant Hills or Evergreen. It would be the name of their subdivision, for example, which is okay, but it was just a little symptomatic of not, getting everyone together, not being a little more unified. And that really comes in handy, of course, as all of you well know, when you have to go, fight City Hall or bring an issue to bear together as a unified community. You just can't have all those little silos everywhere. So again, I commend all of you for sticking to it, having stick-to-itiveness, as I like to call it, and continue to do this. So I'm gone oftentimes Sunday night. Oftentimes is really 8.5 months out of the year, Sunday night through Thursday, sometimes through Friday. And so it's hard for me to get here, except during this period. We just finished the voting session. So really the 8.5 months of voting and massive amounts of committee meetings and 4 sessions and everything all ended a couple weeks ago. And then that frees us up to be here in the district. And most of you know that we have a district office currently out over on Bascom Avenue near Prune Ridge, because the district goes all the way to the summit on the other side of the 5 West Valley cities. And then of course the office in the Capitol. But rather than being in the office 1 day a week or a day and a half, or just here on the weekends, this is a great opportunity from late September, really October, November, December, to be here and to be connecting and trying to get back and meet with some folks. And I want to thank Steve Bennett for persisting, with my office and saying, basically as soon as you're back, we want a date with you. So I'm prepared when it's my turn to answer questions to do that. Let me just talk about very quickly some of the high level stuff going on. The state, as you know, since I've been there 3 years, I've been there 3 annual sessions, went from a combined $150 billion surplus or excess over what was budgeted in my first 2 years to a projected $31 billion deficit this year. Most of you are aware of that. That was reconciled without any deep cuts in a number of ways. One of the things to understand for those of you who are very involved with government budgetary practices is the state does almost everything one-time money. And anything that is new, a new program, anything other than the old programs like education or social services, it's funded on a one-time basis. So it's pretty easy for a governor to come back now compared to some years ago, if you do it that way, to instead of rolling those one times forward, right, rolling them for another year. And another year, if you have a deficit, just come in and take some of those out. And that's kind of what happened in this budget. But I was proud of the Senate. What ends up happening, the way our budget process works, is in the middle of summer, we're really negotiating three parties, right? The Senate, the Assembly, and the governor. So we call it a three-way deal or a three-way negotiation. And the Senate, as long as I've been there, has really been taking the lead on much of that. So it's been an opportunity in this job to really be involved in the handful of things that I get to do, which are not as extensive as a county supervisor, frankly, as an individual. You know, being one of 5 county supervisors like our Supervisor Arenas is a varied, very multi-dimensional job. And on any given Tuesday, as we know, as we just heard, she can put a referral in and say, I want farm worker housing, or, I want to come back and stand up a new program, or I want mental health services, or I want to advance more mental health services in our schools. If anything I decide I want to do like that, I have to introduce in January and then wait until right about now to figure out if it's going to happen or not. Because the governor takes all of our bills at the end of the September session and then this year has until October 14th. So he generally has until mid-October to say yes or no. So really the person that has 1,000 times more power, in the system than anybody else is a governor. That's a pretty important vote when you're voting, because he literally can veto everything. He literally can go to legislators and say, I want a new program and I need you to carry the bill. And that's how things like Care Court, some of the other things you're hearing about more recently, have been happening. In my own case, of course, given the roles I have, which are participating in that larger budget discussion, more than a discussion, I'm in the caucus helping to shape the state budget, which is, certainly big stuff. It's a $350 billion budget. And then we also have the opportunity through committee work and then just direct requests to get budget items put together and brought forward to become pieces of that budget. So for example, maybe nobody else in the entire state legislature is interested in guaranteed income for homeless kids or for foster youth. Maybe that's only me. But I do have the opportunity, not as direct as county supervisor or not as easily effective, but to go in and fight for that and get a program with $60 or $70 or $80 million, for example, put into play. So that's one piece. And in that way, this year, we were successful. With a $31 billion deficit, it was hard to advance new programs. There was a couple of those budget requests, and they did revolve around safety net services that I put together, that we just rolled forward to January, and we'll pick them up again there. But we were able to get $11 million total for the district. And it's something for all of you to keep in mind. The county and the Board of Supervisors has worked with me very closely to do things like guaranteed income, to do $5 million to take the next big chunk of Marshall Cottle Park and move it forward. Things like that, things that need to be done here in terms of infrastructure, should be kept in mind. It should be brought to my attention if we get that opportunity. If leadership comes in the budget process and says, you're going to have the opportunity to deliver district money to your district, in the millions of dollars, we certainly want to know right here, in my original home district, what's needed. And then, of course, we get to participate. I get to participate in a process that reviews somewhere between 2,500 and 3,000 bills a year, everybody's legislation. This year, I think the number that advanced into the committee process was 2,600 bills. I have to, at some point or another, be familiar enough with each one of those to be prepared to vote on them. Because even if you're not on a committee that's hearing that bill, if the bill advances to the floor, which many of them do, you're going to be voting on it. You're going to have to say yes, no, or I don't know, I abstain. But in any case, we're held accountable on that many bills. And then our own bill package, and I'll touch on that very quickly. I get the opportunity to introduce up to 40 bills every 2 years myself, as does every other senator. We don't introduce 40 bills all at once. You'll be happy to know I don't. I think there's some assembly members that do that. But this year we did have over 20 bills, and 16 went to the governor's desk. There's 8 left that we're waiting between now and October 14th to see if he'll sign them. One of those is a fentanyl bill, which I put together in part drawing on some work that Santa Clara County and the Board of Supervisors is doing right now, which is good work. It's a model for the state, but also my own experience as a school board member when I was around when we put school safety plans together, and I knew that they are part of state statute, and I knew that anything in a school safety plan is required to be part of all staff training, classified and certificated, teachers and other workers. So if you can get something mandated into a school safety plan, everybody in the public school system literally has a statutory obligation to train up on it. And then from a school-based standpoint, each school has to put together a plan annually to make campuses safe. But fentanyl, opioids were never in those plans because at the time those statutes were created, it wasn't a thing. It wasn't an issue, a big threat. So as an example, it's that's one of my bills this year that's at the governor's desk. We weren't sure what exactly would happen with that, but it ended up getting there not only with bipartisan support, but ultimately when it went down to the assembly or over to the assembly, it got a unanimous vote, 80-0. All 80 assembly members sent that bill to the governor. So we're hopeful he sees it the same way. I want to stop shortly, but I want to say one more thing, and this is where we get to work with Santa Clara County and with the city of San Jose, and the smaller cities as well in this area, in this district. But San Jose and Santa Clara County are the 2 local governments most likely to come to me, to come to our legislative delegation and say, can you do something for us? And I'm very partial when Santa Clara County comes along, if it's a good idea, to moving that legislation. This year, for example, they came and said when we put the Measure A money out that you just heard Supervisor Arenas talking about, we have to go through CEQA twice, once for the project, and then once again when we go to fund it with the bond money, twice. It's a big delay. So can you just change that for everybody in the state? Just say, if the project's already cleared CEQA, you shouldn't have to clear the financing and start the process all over again. These are good ideas. They're not only good ideas, but people in the state, because Santa Clara County is a good model, generally speaking, it's not hard. I will be the first to tell you to walk into a committee room and say, look, this is what's happening in Santa Clara County. This is what we need to do to make things more efficient for everyone, in this case, housing production. And, folks have a tendency to say, if that's what they're doing there, if that's who the sponsors of the bill are, that's a good thing. We want to support that because the county itself has a good reputation in that way. One of the bills I've been working on is trying to create guaranteed income for the gap between the graduation of homeless high school students. 15,000 graduated last May from California high schools designated as homeless by federal definition. So they were receiving federal benefits while they were in high school. They crossed the stage, got their diploma, got to the other side of the stage, and all those federal benefits went away. And they don't get any kind of benefits, of course, unless they get a job right away, or if they enroll in school, which many of them do, and get that kind of assistance, at the higher educational level. But either way, there's going to be a 4 or 5 month gap before that happens. So the bill is to bridge that gap with a stipend of $1,000 a month just for those students, and it ends. It just doesn't go on forever. It bridges them. And that bill is alive, but it got deferred for reasons of appropriations and the state deficit to January. But again, working collaboratively, I went to the Board of Supervisors and said, I can get you enough money to do that here, to run that program in one county. It's a lot more expensive for the state to run it in 58 counties, but how about we do it here? And the Board of Supervisors, the president of the board, and the rest of the board said, let's do it. And we were able to get the money earmarked in the budget, $3 million, I think is the exact number, to Santa Clara County. So at least here, starting this year, that program will actually exist. So the hundreds of high school seniors who are exiting homeless are now going to have assistance here in this county. I don't know how you could end homelessness when you have this conveyor of 15,000 homeless students every year, literally being graduated into adult homelessness without assistance and without benefits. I mean, I don't know how many ways you can attack homelessness, but I know you're not going to succeed unless you start cutting it off at the age of youth, which is 25% of our homeless population here in Santa Clara County. I don't know if folks are aware of that we have 10,000 homeless persons here in Santa Clara County. 25% are youth. Right? What have they done to deserve that? I don't know what any homeless person's done to deserve it, but clearly, symptomatically and otherwise, a young person, shouldn't be in that position. So I'm going to stop there. Just want to talk about a couple of the bills of the many that, give you a flavor for what I've been working on. I talked a little bit about the process itself. I could talk more about that. It's a crazy process, but maybe on question and answer, some of that will come up. So I'll stop there and thank you, Pat. Mm-hmm.
In 2023, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, there were 47,250 gun violence deaths in the United States in 2023, through 2023. So I'd like to hear more about what you all are doing when it comes to changing.
Yeah, there's been a lot of legislation, also at the governor's urging, on the gun control issue, on the gun violence issue. I will have to tell you, it's getting a little bit to the point of diminishing returns because California over the years, this state, I'm not talking about the rest of the states in the union, but this state, from the standpoint of trying to regulate hardware and having background checks, this state has had background checks at fairgrounds, for example, gun shows for decades, where other states haven't done that. So this state has very stringent general gun control already, and we've done much more in terms of additional legislation. 10 bills last year, I think 10 or 12 bills that went immediately to the governor's desk this year. One of the things we have to deal with, in addition to all that, in addition to just straight up regulation of firearms, making it not so easy for somebody to get a hold of a firearm, especially somebody who shouldn't have one in the first place, is to tackle two things. One, the number of firearms, the really glaring statistic right now, even just in the Bay Area, is the number of firearms in the hands of felons. They are not supposed to have them. We really have only 2 Department of Justice officers for the whole Bay Area that work out of the state, whose job it is to go knock on the doors, of felons, so to speak, and get those guns back. It's not enough. And so that's an area we have to focus on, just one. And then 2, I'll be quick about this. The other one is 2/3 of those deaths in those statistics, and this is validated right here by the Santa Clara County coroner, are self-inflicted. And so, this mental health issue that we're talking about, and the supervisor was talking about as well, has been not only been around for a while, but it's become a much bigger thing amongst youth as well. And so, yeah, it's self-inflicted is counted as gun violence, of course. And so, at some point we need to segment those numbers and say, what can we address most readily in those numbers to start winning? And, one would think that keeping guns away from young people, especially if they're having suicidal ideation or mental health issues, would just be top priority. I think it is common sense wise, but I don't think the laws really reflect that. And we have issues that we have to work out, like protecting privacy, HIPAA information, mental health information, and not importing that into a criminal database. But at the same time, we've got to at least be aware of it when people are issuing gun permits or when people are knocking on a door and our police officers, even when they're trained in crisis intervention, aren't prepared, to have somebody come out the door with a weapon in their hand. And so we get these secondary and cascading problems that are very tragic. Anyway, I'm sorry for the long answer. Yeah. Yeah, it's a little different situation here and now. In some countries, the regulation of guns was very severe decades and decades and decades ago, in the sense that you couldn't just walk into a gun shop. In my grandfather's home country, he was an immigrant, Italy. You could not walk into a gun shop and buy a gun decades and decades and decades ago. You just couldn't do that. And here we could, and it's been arguably protected by the Constitution to a large degree, and the courts have backed it up. But the point being is we have hundreds of millions of guns out there. So it gets a little harder than, in some countries where they have the flash of a tragic episode, right? And they can come in and really map what happened and come in and try to figure out where the guns are, where the breach was, much more readily than here, evidently. But look, I would not make excuses. I would say of the half a dozen crises we seem to be facing these days, everything ranging from climate to fire to, homelessness obviously is a crisis in and of itself. The lack of housing production, I think, is a crisis. But violence itself, especially with the use of guns, I'll stipulate right now, it's one of the top issues that we're dealing with, and it does get conflated with mental health, which is at crisis levels as well. So we have a lot more work to do, even though the state has what people consider to be good gun laws. We now need to start figuring out the intersectionality of these other issues and how they're contributing to violence all around us. I mean, how many of you feel 100% safe going to the grocery store anymore? I don't. I don't feel safe at a city council meeting when I visit. I stopped feeling safe at the Board of Supervisors my last term. The folks have a hard time feeling safe at school board meetings, even when they're school board officials. It's hard to feel safe on the roads right now. I feel like I can't drive from here to Sacramento without road rage occurring, and I don't know where all this rage and hostility is coming from, but people are starting to weaponize automobiles now. So I can't imagine there's anyone here who hasn't experienced, somebody coming up on them and missing their car by a half an inch or an inch when you don't seem to be doing anything to provoke that kind of an attitude. So we're at a point, I think, not just in the state or in Northern California, but in the whole country, where We have a lot of work to do around violence, and gun violence is just one of the most obvious places.
Sure, I have a question. Sure.
Yeah.
So, first of all, care for it, thumbs up. When it comes to the money that either the foster youth or the homeless youth are getting, is that, I would love to see something where, as part of them receiving that money, that they meet with a counselor to help give them direction, help guide them how to apply for college, or, some kind of that. And then you get the funds, so that they are not just still spinning their wheels. But the thing I wanted to state, one of the things as a regular voter that's frustrating is that the state is mandating things that affect my neighborhood without me getting to vote on them. And some things that I get to vote on, there's so many holes in the bill that by the time they get filled, some politicians decide, oh, we're gonna do it like this, that it's no longer something I would want to vote for. So, for example, things that have been dictated is that the getting to split our lots, the no more A, B, C, D intersection. You know what I'm talking about. I can't remember the right terminology, but now it's just miles traveled, right?
Oh, yeah. Level of service policy.
Yes, how crowded it is here in Evergreen and how hard it is to get out. So those kind of things that are being dictated from the state that we're not even getting the opportunity to vote on is frustrating. And my street, and it's packed with cars right now because of the cost of living is part of it, because there's so many people crammed into each lot.
Yeah, we have unique neighborhoods, of course, and we have unique communities amongst cities. This is not Bakersfield in more ways than one, not just, the temperature or the fact that they have oil wells and we don't. It's different how things are laid out, how street traffic is set up. It's, I heard Pat earlier saying there's going to be opportunities to weigh in on land use issues. I had a conversation with somebody earlier today, and they were asking about the Evergreen visioning process from years ago. And I said, look, I think people are still around who were involved in that process, and some who stayed continually involved around Evergreen College and some other places. I don't think you're going to come in to the community and downsell the community on what they'd asked for in the first place. The community wanted a holistic community, a community where gaps were filled in, community amenities were taken care of, and I think that's going to be what they still expect. But to your issue about bills, probably the biggest issue politically that I think we deal with in Sacramento, it happens locally too, but it's just way worse there, is mischaracterization. So oftentimes by the time the messaging gets to the local community or to people on television, watching television or internet or wherever they're getting their news, we look at it and it's just a dramatically different statement about what is happening in the bill than what actually is, right? I mean, you sit there amongst colleagues, Democrats, Republicans alike, and say, what are people talking about here? This is not what the bill does. It's not what the bill says. It's just not what it is, And unfortunately, the legislators, I have to go up there, as I told you, 4 days a week. You're in a little bit of a bubble away from your community. I don't get to be here interacting as much as I would. I think I would spend as much possible time as I could clarifying with folks on individual bills what's really going on. And I thought SB 9, the lot split bill, was like one of those bills because it leaves, people on the news across the country characterized it as the state's taking over the zoning process. The bill explicitly says that only the local government will control objective zoning standards. So, that makes it really, really tough to split a lot. If the city has objective zoning standards that say you have to have this much setback on this side of your house, on this side of your house, you have to have a riparian setback, you have to have a front setback, this neighborhood is zoned for certain heights, and the parking was left to the local governments as well. So, we were kind of sitting there saying, well, all we're saying is, on this bill, is that you can't say only one family can live in a lot. A building designed for one family is all you can put on a lot. That if somebody can put 2 families or 4 families on that same lot and still meet the zoning standards of the city, then they should be able to do that. As of last week, we were told there's only been 12 applications in the entire city of San Jose since the bill passed. We did a workshop with the realtors about, I think, the first year after the bill passed, first 6 months to a year, and there had only been 1 application. That's just the way it is up and down the state. So it's not the panicky, oh my God, developers are going to come in and put 4 times the amount of houses in Evergreen. It's a lot harder than it looks to do any of that. I would suspect in the county unincorporated areas at some point where they have larger lots and the counties are a little more lax about their zoning standards, that people are going to start, doing a lot more of that. But I think in the suburban areas and the urban areas, it's tough. And the cities, especially the big cities, are now coming in and tightening up those objective zoning standards. I think also the problems that we need to address still on that are to come in for the smaller cities, think Morgan Hill or think, even Los Gatos for that matter. Do they have the money to come in and do the work in their planning department? Do they have a staff to tighten up their zoning standards to make sure the character of their communities isn't jeopardized by this bill? And I think that was a flaw. I think what should have happened is a bill should have passed and there should have been grants that went out simultaneously to planning departments, especially in the medium to small cities, and say, here, go ahead, here's some money, go to work and tighten up. We're not trying to interfere with the zoning character of your neighborhoods. And if you have holes, go close those,
Any more questions from the Senate?
This new bill, they made for the small business, I think that's a chaos. The people are getting more paid, people are more careful, more hard to go to the store, they are locking everything.
Yeah.
I think,
I heard the county assessor talk about a month ago in a very good presentation, very compelling presentation, and saying the bricks and mortar stores as we know them now are going to be history. You're just not going to see them anymore. In another decade, they're going to be gone. Everything's delivery, everything's AI, everything's Amazon. And you see the stores closing already. You see what's happening downtown San Jose. I think they have 60 vacancies right now. That's not a temporary trend. And to the extent there's violence for whatever reason, I think that's contributing to the idea that it's going to be harder and harder for stores that we grew up with to survive.
people will be more mentally sick.
Building.
Because as branded in the store, there was somebody came, like to pretend to be buy something.
Yeah.
And he was going to get kerosene or something put up the guy on the fire.
Yeah, no, there's all kinds of violence. I have a cousin, a first cousin that was shot in a Safeway store. It's not healthy right now. It's not healthy. No. Thank you, Pat.
And thank you for your service. Just an aside or adding on to what Senator Cortese said, if you ever get the chance to hear Larry Stone talk, he's very insightful. We had him here 5 or 6 years ago, and he was delightful. I tried to get him for November, but he's going to be at a conference. I think I lined him up for our April meeting, and he'll be in here to regale us with his wit and insights as to what's going on, and maybe he'll cover some of that for us. So keep that in mind. We're going to pivot to the airports real quickly. Unfortunately, Captain Winter from the Civil Air Patrol had to cancel out on us, but we do have the Director of Airports for Santa Clara County here, Eric Peterson.
Hello, folks. So my name's Eric Peterson. I'm the director for the Santa Clara County Airports. My office is right down the street at the Reed Hillview Airport, place that I have been for about 25 years now. I was asked to come in and talk about a couple of things. One was the discussion about closure of the airport, and then what is going on out at the airport. And I thought I'd start with the discussion about closure. And one of the things that I think is important to recognize is that it was about 2019, the Board of Supervisors they made some decisions. One of those decisions was that they were not going to take grant funding for Reed Hillview Airport. That's a big deal because that's generally the source of capital that is used for large-scale construction projects at an airport. And the other is that they were going to look at potential reuse of the airport. And that started what we called the visioning process. And that went on through 2020. The last visioning meeting was in 2020. There was a report that came out as a result of that. There were no decisions that were made. It was an opportunity to engage the community about what the property could look like if the airport were to close. Now, the board has not, as of yet, made a decision to close the airport. So, the common refrain that I hear all the time is that the airport's going to close. And that is a possibility. That is a decision that the board could make, but it isn't one that they have made as of yet. What they did decide, like I said, was to stop taking grants for Reed Hillview. That has ultimately resulted in the airport, which is an enterprise fund, which means that we operate with revenue that we derive from fees that we charge the users of the airport. And traditionally, the airport had been self-sustaining. But without the funds coming in as grants from the FAA, we have now taken out loans from the general fund to do some of the asphalt and other things that we need to do at the airport. To the tune right now of about $7.2 million is what we have outstanding to the general fund. That money has been used for a paving project that we did in, I believe it was 2019, at both Reed Hillview and San Martin. Subsequent to that, we were able to get grant funding for the San Martin, and we paid back that portion of the loan to the general fund. We've also got several $1 million that we're going to use for a light and signage project at Reed Hillview. And our lights, we have lights on the runways and taxiways, and they are at end of life. And the signage is also at end of life. It's over 20 years old. And the signage and the lights don't meet the current standard for airport design. So it's something that the FAA wants us to do. And so that project has been out to bid once. We got, when the bids opened, we had 2 bidders. One was, we had an engineer's estimate. The engineer's estimate on the project was about $3.2 million. The low bid was $5 million, and the second bid that we got was $10 million. And we weren't comfortable that those bids actually represented market price. And so we have changed the package a little bit. added more time, done more outreach, changed to some of the other things to hopefully entice more contractors to bid on the project. And that project, we will be opening those bids on October 17th. And then we'll know, what everybody else has to say. We also have some money set aside right now for a paving project, which my expectation is that we will get that rolling next calendar year. The ramp condition at Reed Hillview is, well, it needs some attention. Some of that asphalt hasn't been touched in more than 25 years, and it's showing it. Some of it's unraveling. There's lots of FOD that gets generated. So we have a plan to address at least some of that in the coming year. So those are two of the projects that we've got going on. That's a little bit about closure. One of the other things that I really want to talk about was fueling. And I assume that many of you have heard that the county eliminated lead acids. So most airplanes, up until last year, most airplanes in this country operated off of leaded avgas. It's referred to as 100 low lead. It's a gasoline that's got 100 octane, and it gets that octane boost by adding lead to the fuel. And the County of Santa Clara executed a lead study and came to the conclusion, the study came to the conclusion that children who lived closer to the airport were more likely to have elevated lead in their blood. And so in 2019, the Board of Supervisors, I'm sorry, it wasn't 2019, it was, I get all these dates mixed up, it was 2021. The board made the decision that the county was no longer going to have the 100 low lead, the leaded avgas, available for sale at either Reed Hillview or San Martin Airport. And that was a pretty big deal. There are a lot of, that was only able to happen because leases at the airport, 50-year-old leases, all expired on December 31st of 2021. And the county at January 1 of 2022 took over ownership of all of the tanks that were at the airport. And that's the only way that was able to happen. But it did happen. And we transitioned to only unleaded fuel. Now, there's a subset of the aircraft that are out there that can't use the currently available unleaded fuel. It's lower octane. If you go to the gas pump with your car, you got the 3 different buttons you can choose, and there's like 94, 96, and 97 octane. Some of the higher performance cars, they tell you to put the high octane fuel in. And that's because when you don't do it, if you've ever driven one of those, and you hit the gas, you'll hear the engine knocking. And that's the exact same thing that airplanes do that need the higher octane fuel. Those engines knock, and that knock is an explosion in the cylinder at the wrong time. And that explosion in the cylinder will tear the engine apart. And so for those airplanes that need 100 octane fuel, they can't use the 94. But it doesn't appear like there are very many of those operating at Reed Hillview. I know there are some, but the graph that I've given you here, I want to talk you through that. This helps to tell that story. So the graph, the blue line across the top of the graph are operations. In an operation at an airport, it's a standard metric that is used, and it is a takeoff or a landing. And in this particular chart, you see I've grouped them by quarter, because quarter just made it a little cleaner to see what was going on. And you can see that the change in operations from 2021 to today is not very dramatic. You see some ups and downs, and those are seasonal. And if you look at them, the downs occur generally in December. This year, January was a pretty rainy month, and that means people aren't flying, generally means you're not selling a whole lot of gasoline either. So even though we made the transition to unleaded fuel, the operations didn't change dramatically. The bars that you see here are the number of gallons of fuel that were delivered to Reed Hillview Airport. And the yellow represents a time when it was only 100 low lead. The orange represents a transition period, which was both 100 low lead and the unleaded fuel. And then the green represents solely unleaded fuel delivery to the airport. And what you see there also is that those numbers don't change very dramatically. You have pretty consistent fuel sales or fuel delivery over the period of time, even once you transition to the unleaded fuel. And what that says, or what that appears to say, is that even though we transition, a large majority of the aircraft that are operating out of Reed Hillview Airport are doing so with unleaded fuel. It would be a very small minority that still have to go to another airport, buy their fuel, and come into Reed Hillview. There are some that do it. I know absolutely that there are. A large part of that's going to be because the largest percentage of aircraft at Reed Hillview are engaged in training activities. And all of the flight schools were pretty quick at making that transition to unleaded fuel. And so that was a big help. If I haven't graphed this for San Martin, I did look at fuel sales. And fuel sales at San Martin Airport, when we made that transition, dropped by about 50%. It's a much smaller number to begin with, clearly because it was one fuel provider, not four, but it's still a pretty substantial difference. And that's kind of the difference also in the, one of the differences in the two airports, the types of airplanes that are there, the types of businesses that are operating there. Now, if you turn the page over, this is a representation of the number of gallons of fuel sold per takeoff or landing. And so this can help take some of the seasonality out of it. It also goes back several more years. I didn't include before 2021 in the other graph because we had COVID, and COVID throws everything off. And if you look at this, you look down in 2019, the very bottom, you can see that at that point, we were selling 1.3 gallons of fuel. I should say 1.3 gallons of fuel was delivered to the airport for every takeoff or landing. And as you move up, you can see that the 2023, the third quarter, that's 3 quarters of the year, because obviously we don't have the fourth quarter yet. We're at 1.8, which means we're selling more avgas per takeoff or landing than we were in 2019. You see in 2020 it jumped up. That was right before, let me think, is that right? That was as COVID occurred. Not certain why that is. There was a big drop in the number of operations. One speculation, it is just speculation, so people were flying in and then they were flying further than they used to because the flight training shut down. And for a couple of months, you couldn't do any flight training. So all the flying would have been transitory in nature. You're going from one place to the other. 2021 on this is when you see the transition from leaded to unleaded, and 2022, it's a fully unleaded number in terms of gallons that were delivered. I believe this should make the people that, this should be comforting to the people that live in the vicinity of the airport, because it really shows what I believe to be a dramatic change in the level or the amount of leaded fuel that's being used in the aircraft that are flying, and consequently a change in the pollution that's being exhausted by those airplanes. Are there any questions about that? Yeah.
You mentioned the need for leaded gas, because otherwise it does the engine things, and it damage the piston.
Right.
And that is due to the high temperatures in the combustion chamber. And the lead helps to cool off that fuel so it will not reignite. But at the same time, you did mention about the nitrogen or oxygen that is caused by the high temperatures. My question is, can those engines be retrofitted with the new electronics to have an EGR valve, exhaust gas recirculating valve that cool off the temperatures in the cylinder? And then you can use unleaded gas to, because of the difference that not getting the air in the reservoir.
There are a lot of challenges in the transition to unleaded fuel for aircraft. If it was an easy solution, they'd have done it a long time ago. Most of the aircraft engines that are in operation today are operating off of a design that's 40, 50, 60 years old. They don't change those designs very often. And part of that is because of the certification process they have to go through to get it approved by the federal government to be able to use in an airplane. The modifications to the engine, what it sounds to me like would be required in your particular scenario would be just to design a new engine. It's unlikely you could modify an existing engine to do that. And there are issues with the gasoline that we use in our cars. You can't just put autogas, the California autogas in particular, into an airplane. Because in California's gas, they use alcohol as that octane booster. And alcohol at altitude will just boil off. And when that boils off, then your gasoline, your octane rating in the gasoline has decreased, but you don't know it because you thought it was higher when you took off. And then you end up with that pinging. And if you're not careful, you'll tear the engine apart. I saw that, yeah.
Yes, couple things. I have a 289 and a 66 Ford Fairlane. We went to unleaded gas, and I had to lay it off in 2000. My wife quit bringing money home. That's another story. It's still on my driveway. But I bought this fake lead. I still have a bottle of it. I took it to the airport and let the flight schools take pictures of it. Why couldn't that fake lead work in those engines? It worked in my 289 just fine. There was no pinging or anything else. And I was highly tuned. And second, we're also told we need to get new heads and new valves for these engines to run on this modern gas. Because it's the valves that wear out, it's what the lead protects. And why can't these aircraft, when they get an engine rebuild, I'm not sure how many hours, was it every 1,000 or 1,500 hours they got to get a rebuild? Why they can't put new heads on with the new valves to cover that, or use this fake lead? Is that possible?
Well, let me start by telling you that I'm not an expert on this. I'm not the, I know what I know what I've read, I know what I've been told. You ask some very good questions. I know that there are challenges with that. It's not just, in the case of the seats on the valve, it's not just the seats. There are other consequences, specifically when it comes to an airplane engine, on you going to the unleaded fuel. And like I said, there's the reality that even if you could put that unleaded fuel in, you couldn't put it in the high compression engines because they still need that 100 octane fuel, which is not something you can get at the gas pump here. And if you could, it still has these oxygenators in it that boil off and cause additional problems. I know I'm not completely answering your question, but that's primarily because I don't really have an answer for your question. Right. Right. Well, actually, she had her hand up first.
Aren't they looking for the planes that cannot fly, that need the high compression? Aren't they in development now, maybe 2 or 3 years out, hopefully, where the new gasoline unleaded will be workable?
So I appreciate you asking that. That was the next thing on my list to talk about. There are 2 primary contenders right now for 100 octane fuel. One is a company out of Ada, Oklahoma, and they're called General Aviation Modification Incorporated. And they have 100 octane unleaded avgas that has been approved by the FAA for use in almost every reciprocating aircraft engine in the US fleet. The challenge right now is production of that and then distribution of that. In the county, I personally am in contact with them on a very regular basis to figure out what is going on with that. They're ready to sell it. They actually have a facility in Houston that's ready to make it. There are 3 primary avgas fuel providers in the United States, and so the next step is for them to begin selling it. And once they do that, we intend to be one of the very first customers for that. The second one is a company called Swift Fuels. They're out of Indiana, and they are actually the producers of the 94 octane fuel that we have right now. And their fuel, I'm in regular communication with them. And my last talk with their CEO, he thinks that their fuel will be approved later this year. And then, and if that's the case, then we could potentially have 2 different unleaded fuels to choose from, potentially next year sometime. So yeah, there's work going on. There are 2 others that are working through a different program to get approved for their unleaded fuel. I haven't heard a whole lot about them. It's primarily GAMI and Swift that are the conversations today.
So this usage of unleaded fuels, will that kind of remove a lot of the lead that's in the air? Or, I've heard a lot of people talking about lead in the air, having people's blood and so forth.
Right.
Is this completely eliminated or reduce it, or what's the effect on this?
Well, when they have a commercially available unleaded 100 octane fuel, when the country has transitioned over to that, you will effectively eliminate the largest producer of airborne lead in our country, which is the aviation sector.
So are still planes driving leaded fuels in Reedville?
Yes, there are. Yeah, like I said, there's some of them. The bigger airplanes, they tend to be bigger, faster, more fun. They require the higher octane fuel. And so those guys have to pick it up somewhere else.
But you still have high compression ratio,
Yeah.
so therefore you still have the nitrous oxide created,
I'm not certain about that.
which is contributing to the pollution.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not.
Zeroing on the layer,
Mm-hmm.
you're not addressing the nitrous oxide.
You're talking about the NOx, right. That's a factor of all internal combustion engines.
Yeah, but they lower the temperature in the vehicles, so that's why. And one of the reasons is through the EGR valve.
Right.
Or lower the compression ratio.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand I better understand what you're saying. Yes.
This gets closer to where we're going to close this airport, and I suspect the developers are pushing this hard. Are we going to start building up San Martin? I mean, we put more hangars there. Is there room there? What is the plan for all the planes that we do?
Well, I would imagine that if the board were to make the decision that they wanted to close the airport, one of the things they would have to do is a study to determine exactly what would happen with all of those aircraft. As it stands right now, the facilities at San Martin do not exist to support the level of activity that we have at Reed Hillview. And it would require a certain amount of development to make that happen. At the same time that the board elected elected to begin discussions about potential reuse of the airport, they also included in that same legislative file a decision not to develop San Martin Airport. So as it stands right now, San Martin would not see any development.
Just a novice question, does jet fuel have lead?
It does not. It is a kerosene base, yeah. It's very similar to diesel. Okay, yes?
Does the San Martin Airport is housing government college aviation program?
Yeah, they have a facility on the campus there. And we have a San Jose State facility at Reed Hillview Airport. Well, seeing no other questions, then I'll step down. Uh-huh.
Yeah. I must not be Italian enough because I think I'm the only person who's been up here tonight who hasn't done that, right? I think I'm not waving my hands enough or something. I don't know what it is, but I feel, yeah, now I feel included. Oh, all right. This is a point where we get updates from our other politicians or the representatives, or that's it. So I want to start with Christian from the mayor's office. I already pimped your 14th and 21st events, so.
No, yeah, I was just going to touch base on it. Thank you again, Pat, for that. You applied on the wall. I guess just for State of the City, just to add on to that, it's a San Jose City College. I believe I shared the flyer with Pat. If you guys need it, feel free to let me know. We're just trying to get as many folks to come out there for the neighborhoods conference, which again is an opportunity to network with the neighborhood associations, probably Pat. Anybody else who can give advice or the associations that set up, you guys right here. And then the State of the City, Mayor's first State of the City. We want as many folks that can come out just hear out what the mayor done for the past year and what is his message for the next few years too. So if you guys have time for that, I'll be happy to share the flyers. You guys are repeating that. We'd love to see you, but I do know October 21st is the beautification day throughout the city. So if you guys have time afterwards, we appreciate your guys' attention. Yes, State of the City, San Jose City College.
Okay. Thank you. Now you can go.
Like up there?
Yeah.
All right.
Give me a podium. Let's go. I want to flip the script first. I want to take questions. First, I'm from Councilmember Domingo Candelas' office. I know a few of you here are probably here to ask questions. I'd rather take those first. So any hands here? Yeah, my name is Sachin, by the way, but I'll take questions first. I know. Well, I'll listen first. So, who?
Oh, my question was, what's your name?
My name is Sachin. So my name is Sachin. About my second month here. I used to work for Councilmember Ash Kalra back in the day. Councilmember Magdalena Carrasco. I took a break. I worked in tech for a little bit, and I just came back. I feel like I'm back home, and I'm really looking forward to learning about the community in general. But really, like my goal is to activate areas that have gone dormant. There's a lot of changes in our neighborhoods since the pandemic. Most recently, I was working on an interfaith breakfast. Pastor Goldstein came, but I had a whole list from 2016, and 80% of that list is basically useless. And it was kind of sad to see, because we have to rebuild that. I imagine that's the same thing on a large scale, to rebuild contacts and networks and kind of bridge the gap between government and our constituency. So that's kind of what I'm passionate about. And I know you guys got some questions for the city, what's going on in the city. So I'd love to see some hands here. Yes, sure.
Because we work together on the Thompson Creek.
Yes.
Do you know if there's been any any of those actions taken to improve that situation with the homelessness?
Yes, so I'm actually really glad you asked that because, we are really close to getting that working group together. We worked with our city departments to basically say, hey, what's the issue? Let's not be PC. We want to have a really open session on what is wrong, what are the gaps, and they said that the county, there is a disconnect between the city and the county when it comes to dealing with the most difficult people. And they have to go through the same channels. So we're trying to figure out, how do we have a back channel for those outreach teams at the city to connect with the outreach teams at the county? And, for you, sir, I know you have an issue that I want to give an update on as well about that gentleman on that same vein of the most critical issues. But But I mean, before you go, I should share. I have some data that I want to provide to you and Pat as well about when we met at that, at your house, and really give you, hey, this is what we've done. Obviously, there's going to be legislation coming out on how to. We're looking to actually make this more of an emergency, as more of a crisis. I know that the mayor's office and several other council members are making that declaration of, hey, we're not acting as if it's an emergency. We need to take that level of commitment, but it's still going to be an outreach-led effort. You can build all the housing you want. You need to take people over there. And a lot of the folks I still see they're not capable of making decisions for themselves, but PD is still not able to step in. And so I know you have an issue, and I'd love to hear your what's going on in your neighborhood, sir.
Well, we have a problem with a serial offender, indecent exposure.
Yeah.
I saw his rap sheet online. It's shared on the Nextdoor post, and there's like 10 years of arrest history.
Wow.
And 3 or 4 active Nextdoor posts right now with all kinds of people putting forth their encounters with them all over the multiple districts in San Jose now that I've seen. And I'm kind of beside myself that it's taken all of this to get addressed. This person doesn't appear to be unhoused. Generally, they have residents associated with them, but they
Really?
wander around and expose themselves. And I had a conversation with him on video this week where I was able to ask him a lot of questions, and his response was, "Nothing's going to happen. If they put me in jail, I'll be right back out to it again."
Yeah. I'm curious, how do you know that he has a residence? Because I know that, Sherry, I've been talking to some of your neighbors, Karen, they were forwarding me those images as well, and I saw the Nextdoor post. And how do you know that? I'm curious.
No is a possibly wrong word. I've been told
Okay.
of where he has stayed, where he has family.
Oh,
And
okay.
when I got that website today, it had his name, age, and the last 3 letters of the same port.
Interesting. And I gave you, you have my cell phone now. I want to stay. So I offer everyone my cell phone because you guys, the community, you are the eyes and ears, and you help us bridge this gap. Sherry, one of your neighbors, has been forwarding me details of people casing cars in the Holly Oaks area, people, just bizarre behavior, right? And all we can do is give those times to the police. But after I got the information from Karen, I was out at the Villages, and I'm coming back to City Hall, and I saw that gentleman, pants off, walking, right? And I called, I've seen him. No, I called. So what I did is I called 988. I stayed on the phone with the county. They have outreach teams that go out, and I called their hotline, just saying, hey, there's a guy who's in distress. Come on, he's got his pants halfway down. He's walking in the middle of the street, and I want your team to go out. So I know that their team went out. Okay, now that is still a voluntary. They need a voluntary, exception from him of, hey, I am voluntarily willing to go into your mental health, drug rehab, whatever program. I'm going to flood that line. I'm asking you guys to flood that line when you see him. PD, and I don't want to, bash my brothers in blue, but they just won't respond to that, and they're probably not the best team to respond. 988, press 1, ask for the trust team, get that location. Hopefully they come out as quick as possible. We need more data on that line, but we're still trying to figure out that guy is incapable of asking for help. Let's be real, right? And this is what we're trying to figure out with the county is, we say that it's voluntary. Can he actually ask for help? Because he's out there. This is it's a sad state for a human being out in our community, and people are seeing that. And I think that these are the questions that we're putting at the front, and this is why we're trying to bring together all those teams. He's all over the place. He should be, and I'm not sure. I mean, we brought this up to PD. Yeah, but there should be a limit of which, hey, this isn't working. He keeps ending up back there, and he's he's committing the same crime. Yeah.
988.
Yes, please. Yeah. Do you have a question?
Yeah, so I think I'm Wesley. I think you called
Yes, Wesley, how are you? Yeah.
So I don't know if you had any updates on being able to go to that tent, that's in Montgomery Hill. You ever see this guy? I don't really know, we haven't really seen him, but I don't know that it's been lived in. I've moved some stuff around there, so I know someone's there.
Yeah. Well, it's nice to see you in person. I gave him a call the other day. I haven't been able to go out there just yet. I'm going out there tomorrow. But the more information I get, hey, this is when he's usually there. If there is a person, that's what he looks like. That's the community's been helping us keep track of these folks. And I know there's issues in our local businesses with people, but I do appreciate you guys reaching out. I'll give a quick update now of what we're doing. Pleasant Hills Golf Course. This is huge. This is happening at August Boger Middle School, October 12th from 6 to 7. Please be there. This is the first meeting. We want the community out there to really give their take on what they want to see. And we're trying to, the council member really believes in the community first approach. The developer should not have something in their mind already. And there should be basically your ideas at the forefront to negotiate what this development would be. And we have a few other events coming up, October 21st, autumn cleanup. October 28th, we have our Fall Family Festival at Lake Cunningham from 10 to 2. Love to see you guys there. Question? At the Family Festival?
D8CRT.
Perfect. Awesome. Yes, sir. Yes, Wesley.
Yeah, I have a question about, that development. I know there was a question in the city council a while ago about being developer-led or city-led versus developer-led. Has that been resolved, or how is that process going?
Yeah, so the developer wanted to kind of push things back, right? So the official date for, kind of the first workshop is going to be in December, and there's going to be other dates following. October is a meeting for the community to learn about that process. So October 12th is the community-led meeting, and you're going to learn about, hey, what's the developer's involvement, the city involvement, and we're trying to make it a trifecta, really, of the community, developer, and the city involved. 6 to 7, August Boger, October 12th. Yes, Jim.
Yeah, so going back to the facility when we had the project, the reason we had that community involvement was there was multiple developments being proposed at one time. And Dave Cortese, who was councilman at the time, decided it'd be a good idea to kind of bring it all together instead of having each single development. So I guess one of the questions is, besides that golf course, what other significant development projects are being proposed for District 8 or the east side?
So, sorry to cut you off. I don't know if you
I was going to tie it up by saying that maybe another visioning project, if you will,
right.
of getting, I spoke with your boss yesterday, he doesn't want to put together a committee or a group to do another, and I'll just rephrase it as a visioning kind of a committee. So what other things are out there besides this? What can we do to not have each of those?
So can we defer that? We're going to cover that very topic in our November meeting.
Perfect.
So Robert's working on coming in with all the areas out there that are bubbling around, and there's a lot of attention to that.
Let's do it at the meeting.
Yeah.
But here's what the process is going to look like. I don't think that's a proposal.
It's not a proposal, but that idea is very valid, even with that development, because we're looking at, like Eric said before, hey, the Reed Hillview Airport's closing. That is also part of this regional thinking, right, where it can start there. And, I'll go back to the council member and see what you guys really talked about and kind of have an answer of when that group would form. I think you bring a valid point, Jim.
I think that's a good discussion topic for our
Yeah. Any other questions? Cool. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Yep. Derek, Mount Pleasant. Happy birthday, by the way.
Oh, thank you very much.
Facebook's a powerful tool.
With Mountain School District, we're off and rolling. We have our award retreat topics to be discussed, and our superintendent and your president will list out what we're doing in the presentation. But hopefully that'll at least get soon, and we'll be able to have our program. We're looking to increase our enrollment. Our kids are starting to come back. We're expecting another influx during this month of October, and so we're looking for our enrollment numbers to improve that as most schools are. And that's what we're at.
Thank you, Derek.
One other thing, I mentioned on an email that the Central County Board of Education, or specifically the superintendent, has taken the item, future agenda items, off the agendas. That has been on the agendas for decades. In fact, you go on the website and see that on the agenda back to 2015, where the website stops there. But it's basically a public voice, public access to the board to put things on the agenda. And so, and maybe we can talk about it at our next steering committee meeting. Various groups like the Asian Law Alliance, unions, and the other groups and organizations will be joined on to a letter, basically to the California School Board Association, basically compelling the local county board to add that item back on the agenda so the public has this voice. The board has the tools itself to do it, but for whatever reason, it's not being utilized. But we need access if we want to bring up issues and so forth. They should be discussed at a board meeting, and we should all, as community members, as taxpayers, the public entity, we have that right. And so we want to make sure that our voices are heard.
Thank you, Derek. Jim, Evergreen?
Yeah, nothing very different than what Derek just said. School up and running, it's been going on about 6 weeks now. The attendance has been settling out. We are seeing some growth in a couple of schools. The O.B. Whaley, which was slated for closure, which we put a kibosh to, is now going into this next phase of planning as to what we're going to do with that school. So that, along with a bunch of committees that were created when the new superintendent, Dr. Lyons, joined us and told them we want to reinstitute all the committees on land use, on facilities use, on budget, and so on. We've all been finally constituted. We've got all the volunteers who have signed up for those, plus the representation from our stakeholder groups. So they are all going to be in full swing starting in the next couple of months. So I'm going to be in a lot of meetings. Yeah, other than that, for the most part, things are running relatively smoothly. The budget looks real good. We had a lot of money that we were given through COVID that we were able to parse out. And the thing is, though, that we realized that was all one-time money on things that people want to keep, like we should debate and so on, how we make that money last. And so that's been the issue. Is, yeah, things look really good at the bottom line. I know there's a lot of groups that are looking at that saying, wow, that means we can get this and this and this. But there are things that have started, we want to continue, and that's really going to be the challenge of the budget committee and of the school board to decide how to appropriate that money.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Gill, open space.
I have actually a few updates about the open space authority's business. The first one, the authority received a grant fund from a California State Coastal Conservancy in the amount of $1.2 million towards CD camps planning and engagement. The second item we have actually updated is the Serena Farm opened to the public on Monday, September 25th. Actually, Supervisor Arenas already mentioned in her updates also. The third one is construction for the Yard Street Bridge and accessible day use area project is moving rapidly. The new accessible trail is being installed and a new bridge connecting our existing preserve to the former Blair property has been delivered and is at the site. The public affair held an event on September 7 for content creators at Coyote Ridge Open Space Preserve. this month to leverage the social media in helping educate the public about the new preserve. Over 1,000 people have signed up for the butterfly test. Last but not least, Community Day is coming up on Saturday, October 14, from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. and this is the flyer for that. And if you guys need any flyer, go over website and see under the events. So print that one. This is all the information is there. That's it. Then next month I'll come back with more updates.
All right, thank you, Dr. Gill. One thing that occurred to me, I forget who, something said, Bob Nunez. With our February meeting, we will be moving to the first Wednesday in February because it's the 7th is what it is. We want to hold a candidate forum for both the mayor's race and the city council race. I've lined up Bob Nunez to facilitate the mayor's one. If you have any thoughts on who you think would be good at doing the city council one, pass them along to me or any other steering committee member and we'll reach out to it. But start getting the word out that it'll be February 7th. We'll have a candidate forum. Place is TBD. It's probably here unless we start getting a feeling that there's going to be a larger number of people than we can accommodate here. And with that, I'll throw it out there. This is where any of us gets a minute or two to say anything they want, pretty much. And I apologize for running late tonight, but we kind of packed the agenda. Anybody have anything else they want to add? All right, thank you. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your week.